Welcome to The Explainer. So today, we're going to talk about something really interesting, a deep connection between, believe it or not, romantic poets and the secret toolkit our brains use every single day to handle, well, to handle chaos.
Yeah, I know. It sounds a little strange, right? You've got these 19th century poets, maybe you're picturing Lord Byron or Shelley, and then you have modern psychology. What could they possibly have in common? Well, what if I told you that they're both tackling the exact same fundamental human problem?
Okay, to really get this, we've got to start with the poets. Because for them, there was this massive inner battlefield, a struggle that wasn't just in their lives, it was their lives, and it became the very core of their art.
And this really breaks it down for us. There's this fantastic PhD thesis from Durham University that basically says the creative lives of these poets were a constant tug of war. On one side, you have pure chaos, all the doubt, the randomness of life, what they call the unformed deep, just messiness. But on the other side, you have their drive for control. That's their art, their rage for order, their attempt to create these, and I love this phrase, frail spells of poetry to try and make sense of everything.
And the author of that thesis, Madeline Callahan, she points out that this tension, this was their creative engine. It was fertile for sure, but it was also dangerous. I mean, they weren't just writing about chaos from a distance, they were living in it. And their art was this heroic, sometimes even desperate attempt to build something beautiful and orderly from all that mess. And you know what? That struggle, it's probably more familiar to you than you realize. Okay, and this is where it all connects back to us. Because that whole struggle, imposing order on a chaotic inner world, that's not just for famous poets. Nope, that's a battle every single one of us fights, every day. I mean, just think about it for a second. When you feel overwhelmed or anxious, or you're just not sure what to do, what's actually happening inside your head? Well, turns out your brain has this secret toolkit that it just deploys automatically to protect you. And in psychology, these are called defense mechanisms. It's a fancy term, but all it really means is these are the unconscious tricks your mind plays to keep you stable when you're dealing with thoughts or feelings that are just too much. And you've definitely used these. I mean, come on. Ever just refused to accept something bad happened? That's denial. Ever convinced yourself you absolutely had to buy that thing with a whole list of perfectly logical reasons? Yep, that's rationalization. Or how about this one? You have a terrible day at work. You come home and you just snap at someone over something tiny like the TV remote. Classic displacement. We all do this stuff. But here's the catch. Not all of these tools are created equal. In fact, some psychologists, like the brilliant George Valiant, figured out that you can sort of rank them like rungs on a ladder, going from the not-so-helpful ones to the really, really adaptive ones. So, down at the bottom of the ladder, you've got the immature defenses. Think projection, passive aggression, stuff that might make you feel better for a second, but, causes way more problems in the long run. But then, as you climb up, you get to the mature defenses. These are the good ones. The things that show real emotional strength, like being able to laugh at a bad situation. That's humor. Or helping others, altruism. Even just consciously deciding, you know what? I'm not going to deal with this right now, but I will later. That's suppression. So the whole point here isn't to get rid of your defenses. You can't. It's about upgrading your toolkit. It's about learning to use the better tools more often and consciously finding healthier ways to manage that inner chaos we all have. And this brings us full circle, right back to our poets, because it turns out their incredible artistic genius was actually the most sophisticated, most mature defense mechanism you can have. Remember we talked about their effort towards mastery? Well, the thesis basically argues that their poetry was that effort in action. It was the performance. They weren't just writing poems about their feelings. They were actively building order out of chaos, one line, one stanza at a time. And what they were doing is a perfect example of what might be the ultimate mature defense, sublimation. It's like psychological alchemy, right? It's taking all the lead, all the ugly, difficult, raw emotions and impulses, and transforming it into gold, something healthy, constructive, and valuable to everyone, like art or science or music. And that's the beautiful connection right there. The poets weren't running away from their demons. No way. They were grabbing all that chaotic energy, all that doubt and despair, and channeling it into something timeless. So what literary scholars look at and call artistic heroism, a psychologist would look at and call a sign of incredible emotional health. Okay, so what does this all mean for us? right here, right now, what's the big takeaway from this weird link between old poems and modern psychology? Well, the title of that thesis we've been talking about, The Life We Image, I think it just nails it. The idea is that we're all artists, in a way. We're all handed this raw material, our life, which is sometimes messy and chaotic, and it's our job to shape it, to image it, to give it some kind of meaning.
The poets, well, they just did this on a much bigger, much more public stage. But their work is this powerful reminder for all of us that facing our inner chaos, not pushing it down, not ignoring it, but actually engaging with it, can be one of the most creative and powerful things you can ever do.
So, at the end of the day, their story leaves us with a really big question for ourselves. We all have our own version of that doubt, chance, and mutability. So the question is, what are your tools? What do you use to shape that chaos into something meaningful? Maybe it's a paintbrush, or maybe it's a spreadsheet, or a run in the morning, or just talking to a friend. Whatever it is, the challenge is the same for all of us. How do you image your life?